Hi everyone, this is Tim of Broken Dice bringing you my Romans versus Greeks with the Roman part of turn 4. And if anyone has seen the other video that had no audio on it, I highly apologize. I had no idea. I'm having some issues with certain microphones on this computer setup that I have, and hopefully this one will work better, and I will edit it before I post this video. Okay, let's move on to the Roman part of turn 4. So here we have this ongoing combat on the Greek right flank between the Galatian infantry and the allied Greek cavalry. Surprisingly, these Galatians have pushed these Greek cavalry all the way back to almost to the edge of the table. And in this combat, you can see that it's not going well for the Greek cavalry, and they lose and get pushed off the table. So now that the Galatians have defeated the Greek cavalry, they turn to face the combat, and that puts them in a very advantageous position for the next turn for the Romans, and we will see how this turns out. I don't know. That was a big deal, I believe. So here you see the rest of the Roman movement as they advance forward. The two cohorts on the end are now being supported by the cohorts from the second line. The middle part of the second line could not reach the cohorts that are in basically the salient with the Greek pikes. Didn't have enough movement to reach them, so those units will have to hold on until the second line gets there. The third line has moved up to put some more distance between them and that units of Greek heavy cavalry to the top right in the screen. Let's move back on to the combats then. In this combat against the two Roman cohorts, the Silver Shields and that little supporting unit of skirmishers, which I don't think get enough credit in Hail Caesar as being important in the way the game plays. They can add just enough, especially when units are of equal strength. They can add that little extra that can always turn a combat. These Silver Shields are going to win. They're going to defeat the cohort in front of them and push the one behind them back. Yeah, and just for fun, I took a picture of the dice roll for the Roman cohort that was fighting. They only lost by 1, and so, you know, the odds were they were going to be hanging in there, and I didn't. Under that circumstance, I don't think I give the Silver Shields much of a chance. But they rolled a 4, lost the combat, and the front cohort gets destroyed, and the rear cohort has to back up. In this picture, you can see the cohort with the blue arrow behind it. They had won their combat and were able to push forward their victorious move, but they couldn't reach the two cohorts that were behind. And this combat to the left, the one with the disordered unit, it has a little bit different outcome where that cohort gets destroyed and the skirmishers break from combat as well. So that became a big deal, but yet it doesn't feel that great for the Greek side. You know what I mean? You look at it going, yeah, they've destroyed a couple of cohorts, but yet there's still an awful lot of those pesky Romans available. And so here we see the combat to the left of that centralized combat where the salient was. This is the double depth. This is the front end of that double depth cohort units of pike that got charged by the Roman cohorts and have been in combat. And then you can see where that second cohort came up in support. They also have a unit of skirmishers in support. So this was one of those combat I thought, well, this one could go awry really quickly for the Greeks. You know, the one bad dice roll, and you could lose them both. It didn't happen. So here again, we're looking down onto the Greek Phalanx double depth, basically, as it's defending itself against these attacking Romans. They have won this combat. The lead cohort has become shaken. The rest of the supporting units, the cohort and the skirmishers, are going to have to give ground, I believe. And this lead cohort gets destroyed. And now moving on to the left, where we have the cavalry engagement along with against the, well, more of the hoplite armed infantry with some thoroughforii in behind as supports. That Roman cavalry gets destroyed outright. So the question becomes then, indicated by the two blue arrows, do we turn and face the threat to our parent division and assist them, units to what would be the left of that combat with the cavalry, or turn and face the center of the ongoing combats with the Roman cohorts? When I'm doing solo, I try to set some parameters for tactics, because I think it's not very interesting to me to know everything about what everyone does and everything can do, and I'm going to do this tricky thing and get away with it, and do this tricky thing and get away with it. No, I tend to set some parameters to where if units are with the division, then unless that division is unengaged and they can be spared, let's say, to do something like that, I always choose to support the parent division. And that's just in solo games, obviously. But that was the decision I had when that Roman cavalry got defeated, and I chose to turn to the left and support its parent division. Okay, so this, before we move on to the very last part of this turn for the Romans, it's good to take a look and see how this has turned out. This in the middle here is very important, where the phalanx in the deep part of this salient with the Romans moving up, that second and third line, that was very important for them to win, but yet they're still facing two more cohorts that they're going to have to deal with. The combat to the left with the Greek Phalanx that had the war elephant run through them. Sorry about that. They need to hold on too, because if these two get pushed out, then the Romans have the ability to both turn right and left. And we've seen earlier that Galatian infantry is now completely unengaged and ready to do whatever it wants to do. So this next turn for the Greeks is going to be very important, very important. A couple of cohorts down, but I am not counting the Romans out in this by any stretch of the imagination. So now we come down to the action on the Greek left flank. The Romans have finally come down, all their allies have finally come down off the hill and have charged the light cavalry, which prudently give ground and evade that sort of a charge. They don't want to stand there. So they're going to evade back through that small little unit of Peltus. And you can see where in relationship on the table, how this is, where the Roman cavalry on the right part of the screen, that is before we took them off. Yeah, it's, and then those two units are going to swing right to left to face these oncoming infantry for the Romans. So here you can see the movement of the victorious units against the Roman cavalry. They have turned to face. The infantry for the Romans, the Allied infantry for the Romans, have come down off the hill. They're going to make short work. No suspense here. They're going to make short work of that small unit of peltast, and then they're going to move on into combat with that Thurophori unit that is behind them, and they are medium infantry, let's say, at best. And like I said, no surprise here. The peltast becomes shaken quickly under this onslaught, and they will be destroyed. And that will give this unit, these two units of infantry, the one in front and the one supporting from behind, the opportunity to do a victorious move to their front. So once they have gotten rid of those pesky peltasts, they've moved into these Thurophori, which are kind of like medium infantry. They have spears and shields and javelins, and they were kind of like a utilitarian unit for the Greeks at this point in time, and so they got charged by these guys. And again, I don't think that it's going to last very long. Actually, I'll give you a spoiler alert, it doesn't. So here you see the Thurophori being charged this victorious move, and they're going to just make short work of these guys. Obviously, they're already shaken. They fail their test, and they break. And at the end, we're going to see how this side of the battlefield is shaping up. We'll talk about it a little bit, and what I think is going to happen in the next couple of turns. All right, in this photo, let's just talk about what's going on from right to left, and we'll just kind of keep things moving. The double depth phalanx has destroyed the units that they were in direct combat with. They couldn't quite catch the supporting units, and so that's kind of what you see, that gap there. The victorious Greek infantry against the Roman cavalry have turned to face. And likewise, the Roman Allied infantry have turned to face them due to proximity. They don't have to pay attention to the open order small units of cavalry. They're not worried about them. Those units of cavalry have a much bigger problem when they're faced with all that ambushing cavalry coming down off the hill on the other side of the tree line. So that's kind of where we're at here. This is going to be quite interesting in the Greek part of turn 5 to see how these combats turn out, because as we've seen, the Galatians on the far end are free to go. This is going to be really important. If the combats go awry in the center, it's not going to matter. But these things, if they go bad, then the center is just toast. Okay, here are the two photos giving us our split view here. Mainly the right side of the engagement and the left side from our viewpoint. Starting from the far right, you can see the Galatians are free to maneuver in their next time. The Silver Shields have pushed back their opponents. The next unit has beaten the front line cohort and now have moved towards the second line. The phalanx next to them have pushed back their opponents. And then you can see the double depth phalanx having beaten the cohort that it was in combat with and pushed back its supports. So we still kind of have that salient thing working in the middle of the Greek line. At this point in time, I see this working for either side. It just depends on what happens in the combat rolls. Okay, let's move over to the left photograph. Again, let's start with that double depth phalanx. Once it won its combat, we had a choice to make. Does the lead cohort move forward and stay in contact as much as possible to try to reach the Roman cohort that it was fighting against earlier, and its support turn to face the center? Or do we keep it all in one big block and just have that steamroller keep moving forward? Now, if I was playing another human opponent at this stage of the game, I might think it would be more important for my supporting unit of pikemen to turn with its victorious move, stop supporting the lead unit, and turn to face the center of the combat where the salient is. So I had a choice to make. And like in most things in solo gaming, I always roll a dice to see what I would do. Now, personally, in this one, I just think it's more thematic for those guys just to keep that steamroller moving. And so that's what I chose to do. Now, if I was wanting to do that, I would actually roll a dice to give myself the freedom to do that. And that's why you see the arrows, one going up, one going to the right. That was the choice. What does that support unit do? And I've decided that it would stay in lockstep and support that other unit as it goes forward. And then we see again, due to proximity, everybody turns to face people that are units that are close to them, and it's going to come down to quite the slugfest here, I think. The light cavalry down at the bottom for the Greeks, facing off against the light cavalry for the Roman allies. Plus we have one medium unit of cavalry left behind that tree line. That could be something that turns the game completely in favor of the Romans, perhaps. There's a lot of what ifs coming up in the next turn. You know, and I can't wait to get to this one. This will be fun to see how this one really pans out. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope everybody enjoys this kind of stuff. It's nice to sit down and kind of ruminate over what sort of tactical decision you would make if you were playing a human opponent as to playing a solo game in which you set sort of some parameters for yourself for your tactical behavior. I think it's kind of interesting to broach those topics. If you've got any questions, if you've got any, what would you do? How would you set your solo game up to where you have some parameters, or maybe you don't like parameters. You're going to play it as a complete series of what ifs, and there is no wrong answer. So everybody stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next time with turn 5.